The Dead, by the Irish writer James Joyce, recounts a series of events that take place during the traditional Christmas party hosted by the Morkan sisters. However, some interpreters place the celebration on the eve of the Epiphany. Through what begins as a cheerful celebration filled with dancing, singing, and a feast that highlights the great hospitality of the hostesses, a sense of melancholy emerges, along with the somber remembrance of those who have passed away and are no longer present. More cruelly, if one chooses to see it that way, the story shows how these dead are more present and alive than the living themselves. This truth strikes the protagonist, Gabriel, with force, as he feels diminished upon learning about his wife's youthful love for a young man who had died years earlier due to illness. The story begins with Lily, the caretaker's daughter, greeting guests at a Christmas party organized by the Morkan sisters. The narrator starts from her perspective but soon shifts to Gabriel's, who becomes the central focus of the narrative until the end. In the living room, Mary Jane plays a musical piece, the guests enjoy some dancing, and Gabriel has an awkward interaction with Miss Ivers, a young nationalist who accuses him of being pro-British and jokes with him. The evening continues with Aunt Julia singing a raid for the bridal, earning praise for her performance. During dinner, Gabriel takes charge of carving the goose and serving portions to the guests. The conversation revolves around topics such as renowned tenors, singers from the past, travel, and the hospitality of monks, with their peculiar practices, such as sleeping in coffins. However, a tone of melancholy permeates the atmosphere as reflections on death and religion arise. Gabriel delivers a speech honoring the hostesses, symbolically asking the attendees to take their desires for reality. The dinner ends with a toast to the Morkan sisters and Mary Jane. In the vestibule, the guests bid farewell. Amid the confusion caused by Freddie Malins and Mr. Brown as they direct the driver, Gabriel notices his wife, Greta, standing motionless on the stairs, enveloped in an air of mystery and grace, deeply moved by a song performed by one of the guests. On the way home in a carriage shared with Bartell Darcy and Miss O'Callaghan, Gabriel, filled with happiness and anticipation of being alone with his wife, recalls the intimate moments they shared. However, upon arriving at the hotel, his desire for closeness is interrupted when Greta reveals the reason for her demeanor on the stairs. The song reminded her of Michael Fury, a youthful love who had died of illness after going out in the rain to see her one last time. The story concludes with Gabriel reflecting while his wife sleeps. He realizes that, compared to Michael Fury's passion, his own role in Greta's life has been insignificant. Overcome by melancholy, he relives the night's events as the snow falls outside, blanketing everything. The Dead is a work of great ambiguity. Some critics see it as a continuation of Joyce's harsh critique of Ireland in the short story collection Dubliners, while others view it as an attempt at reconciliation. In fact, the author wrote a letter to his brother stating that he had not been entirely fair in his depiction of Ireland in Dubliners. Thus, The Dead can be seen as the unfolding of a traditional festive gathering, where the characters represent Irish society with its prejudices, failures, and traumas. The story reveals the paralysis of the country, a metaphor used in another story from Dubliners, where the final moments of a paralyzed priest are narrated and portrays a society that is, in many ways, dead. Setting aside these interpretations, we will focus on the two main themes of the story: hospitality and melancholy. If we choose to delve into these themes now, it is because the other elements present in The Dead, nationalism and religion, are constant motifs throughout Joyce's work. However, we cannot entirely ignore these aspects when analyzing the story. Regardless of whether the party takes place closer to Christmas or the Feast of the Epiphany, the story's framework is a celebration deeply tied to religion. The protagonist's name, Gabriel, has prompted critics to draw parallels and similarities between him and the Archangel Gabriel, who announced the incarnation to Mary. The contrasts between the warmth of the celebration inside the Morkan sisters' house and the cold outside, with snow blanketing everything, also guide the narrative. Music plays a fundamental role throughout the story, From Mary Jane's intricate performance to Aunt Julia's singing, the dinner conversation about tenors, and Bartell D'Arcy's song, which triggers Greta's memory of a youthful love. In The Dead, Joyce showcases what he considers the best of his country: hospitality and humanity, embodied in the Morkin sisters' warm reception of their guests. Hospitality gradually transforms into melancholy. It first appears in the aunt's cherished memory of Gabriel's mother, takes center stage during dinner when the guests recall the great performers of the past, and resurfaces when they remember Patrick Morkan, the deceased grandfather. It reaches its peak when Greta, upon hearing one of the guests sing a particular song, recalls a youthful love, a young man with whom she used to stroll and who died of tuberculosis. When Gabriel sees his wife, full of grace and mystery, listening motionless to that melody from the stairs, he is unaware of the cause of her demeanor. Yet, as he contemplates her, he is overcome by an unusual sense of happiness and a longing for intimacy with his wife. This feeling dissipates when, alone in their hotel room, she reveals the reason for her reaction to that song and her sadness. Greta's sorrow and the memory of her deceased lover become, for Gabriel, a revelation of the secondary role he has played in her life, prompting introspection and reflection. The narrator tells us,
he saw himself as a ludicrous Gier acting as a penny boy for his aunts, a nervous, well-meaning sentimentalist, orating to vulgarians and idealizing his own clownish lusts, the pitiable fatuous fellow he had caught a glimpse of in the mirror. Instinctively he turned his back more to the light lest she might see the shame that burned upon his forehead.
The symbolism of the names of both characters, Michael and Gabriel, seems to make sense. Michael is the warrior angel of the final judgment, who carries the souls of men to judgment, often represented with a scale. It is the character of Michael Fury who makes Gabriel judge himself. On the other hand, Gabriel, like the Archangel Gabriel, responsible for the Annunciation, who brings a promise of new life, also ends the night in Joyce's story with a revelation that changes his life. While she sleeps and the snow falls outside, Gabriel stays awake, reflecting on himself, the events of the night, his wife, and the dead lover, his rival. We can read,
his curious eyes rested long upon her face and on her hair, and as he thought of what she must have been then in that time of her RST girlish beauty, a strange friendly pity for her entered his soul. He did not like to say even to himself that her face was no longer beautiful, but he knew that it was no longer the face for which Michael Fury had braved death.
Gabriel's vision, like that of the angel, becomes beatific. He looks upon his wife and his aunts with pity, wondering what will happen when they die.
Better pass boldly into that other world in the full glory of some passion than fade and wither dismally with age. He thought of how she who lay beside him had locked in her heart for so many years that image of her lover's eyes, when he had told her that he did not wish to live.
In fact, the story becomes so abstract, so ambiguous, and so poetic toward the end that it even allows for the interpretation of Gabriel's suicide. This stems from the mention of his journey to the West, which could refer both to the trip Miss Ivers had spoken of and to a decision to take his own life. Other interpreters of the work, however, see these lines as signaling a transformation in Gabriel, who now has a deeper understanding of himself. His soul had approached that region where dwell the vast hosts of the dead. He was conscious of, but could not apprehend, their wayward and flickering existence. His own identity was fading out into a gray, impalpable world. The solid world itself, which these dead had once reared and lived in, was dissolving and dwindling. A few light taps upon the pane made him turn to the window. It had begun to snow again. He watched sleepily the flakes, silver and dark, falling obliquely against the lamplight. The time had come for him to set out on his journey westward. Yes, the newspapers were right. Snow was general all over Ireland. It was falling on every part of the dark central plain, on the treeless hills, and softly upon the bog of Allen, and farther westward, gently falling into the dark, mutinous Shannon waves. It was falling, too, upon every part of the lonely churchyard on the hill where Michael Fury lay buried. Thickly it drifted over the crooked crosses and headstones, on the spears of the little gate and the barren thorns. His soul swooned slowly as he heard the snow falling faintly through the universe and faintly falling, like the descent of their last end, upon all the living and the dead.